Okay, this is a PC World magazine from December 1994. So I found this in my garage somewhere when I was looking for some stuff. It's pretty much a magazine from 1994, or about 25 years ago. There aren't a lot of magazine stands now, or places that sell magazines, or the quantity of magazine sales have gone down quite significantly over the years. So about 25 years ago, when we had magazines, we probably had magazines until maybe quite recently, until 2013. They were pretty common until then, I guess. But now they're not so common. We don't have a lot of magazines. So a lot of these magazines had a lot of advertisements in them, like this advertisement about this computer company, and advertisements like this. About various different types of computers. A 486 SX33 megahertz computer, $1,395. That's a lot of money by today's standards. Pentium 100, $3,795. A Pentium 486 SX33 came with 4 megabytes of RAM, 214 megabyte IDE hard drive, 3.5 inch 1.44 megabyte floppy drive. Came with a video card, a Super VGA, Diamond Install 64-bit, PCI, 1 megabyte of DRAM, a Microsoft mouse, MS-DOS 6.2, Windows 3.11. Around this time I got a Pentium 100 megahertz. I think around late 1994 I got one. So back in those days, there were a lot of computer companies. Like so many computer manufacturers. This one is called Zeos, Z-E-O-S. That was a pretty popular computer company. And this is Zeos' advertisement right here about the kind of computers they're offering. It's quite a lot of money by today's standards if you think about it. So a gallon of gas back in 1994, I think it was about maybe $1 a gallon. And today a gallon of gas is probably like maybe $3.20 on the average if you compare it across the United States. Maybe anywhere from $3 to $3.50, you know. See what this is. Oh, this is the article about the Pentium Challengers gear up in 1995. Different types of processors they had. So they had a Cyrix back then. And they had that's AMD, right? Advanced Micro Devices, AMD, and what else? These are probably socket 5 or socket 7 CPUs. But they still did use Pentium 4s. I'm sorry, 486s in 1994. It was good for DOS applications, but I don't think it really did well when it came to doing Windows applications. I think the Pentium did a better job of it. This is talking about Intel CPUs. It's comparing Intel with other CPUs like the AMD K5, Cyrix M1, Next Gen NX 586. I don't even know what that is. Some chip company I've never heard of. It's Intel P6. Okay. Like I said, a lot of advertisements on these old magazines. I guess since the internet wasn't really mature back in those days, the only way to really advertise stuff for any industry was by either advertising it on television, radio, or a magazine. So a magazine like this would specifically target people who are interested in computers, basically. So hence the magazine's name is PC World. Here's another company, Acer Computers. Acer is still in existence today. Yeah, they're still in existence for sure. If you call that number, I don't think anyone's going to answer it. And see, these old ads, they don't have any website address, URLs. So if you want to order something, you have to call them by telephone. This is another computer company back in the 90s. Ares Micro Development Incorporated. They no longer exist now. And then you had another computer company called Micron. There were so many. Let me get to that page that has some of these companies. And the PC magazines had articles about different types of software. This is about AutoCAD, which is a computer-aided drawing program for architects and engineers, I guess. And Hijack 3.0. This is some image editing software, I think. So here, this part right here is a business reply mail. This is how you used to get magazine subscriptions back in the day. So the subscription cost is $22.97. This one magazine costs $4.95. So you get a pretty good amount of savings if you order a subscription for a year. That's how I ordered a lot of my magazines back in those days. But I haven't had a magazine subscription since I think the last time I subscribed to a magazine was back in maybe 2002, and that's about it. After that, everything was just reading web pages, the internet. So after around 2000, I got like a cable modem, and that's made it very easy to go on the internet and do whatever you needed to do, you know. This software is about addresses, zip codes, and more. Well, we don't need to do that anymore because we have Google and the internet, right? If you want to find someone's address, just Google it, or go to the yellow pages or white pages. Just cloud-based. Well, Texas Instruments used to make computers. Look at that. Laptops back in those days were quite expensive because LCD screens were extremely costly to produce. Wincom Pro simplifies internet email. Well, it's also a fax program. But these days we don't need anything like that because, you know, we have features like WinFax built into operating systems like Windows 7, 8, 8.1, and 10. You know, it's all built in there. It's integrated. This software costs $129. Exchange files across platforms. Yeah, a lot of articles about new kinds of software applications for computers. This is mostly a magazine that was built around Microsoft DOS and Microsoft Windows platforms. It doesn't have anything about Macintoshes in here or any other computers like Amiga or whatever. Amiga and Macintosh probably had their own magazines. This is exclusively just for PCs. WordPerfect. This used to be a very popular program back in the day. Not anymore. I guess nowadays it's Microsoft Office, which is popular. And you also have free software from Linux, right? Which is Office-based software also. What's this? Zenith even used to make computers. Look at that. This is kind of like a transformer type of computer where you can detach the screen from the laptop keyboard, and you'll also have a docking station here. Has floppy drives. No, I mean it's kind of like a back panel. There's a floppy drive, a CD-ROM drive, which was a big thing back in those days. Everyone was talking about multimedia and CD-ROMs. The DVD players came around maybe around 1997 when I bought my first DVD ROM disc player for my computer. I bought it at a computer show. I think it cost like $50 or something. The thing lasted a long time. The neat thing about it is you could play like DVD movies on your computer. Here's another computer company, Quantex Microsystems. I guess it's highly recommended by PC World that you should buy it. $486DX66, $1,499. So a lot of people used to order computers from other states. So this company was based in New Jersey. So if you ordered this computer by calling this number, you wouldn't have to pay a sales tax. That was one of the good things about ordering computers online from magazines like these, is that you didn't have to pay any sales tax, but you did have to pay shipping. But sales tax was almost maybe 8.25%. I live in California, so if you bought a computer like this, you would pay over you'd pay maybe $250 in taxes, and maybe the shipping was $100. It'd definitely be worth it to order something like this and just pay the shipping. There was a lot of market saturation back in the mid-1990s in the computer field. There were so many people making programs and computers for making PC clones, based on the Windows and Microsoft Windows platform. By the time we get to the mid-1990s, at first, Windows 3.11 was the preferred operating system for the PC world, and then it transitioned to Windows 95. Around maybe late 1995, Windows 95 became the preferred operating system. However, there were people who were still using Windows 3.11 as well, but I don't think a lot of people were using DOS by then. No. Most of the operating systems were probably a GUI based Windows OS. Era of affordable high-powered computing. Computers definitely did become more affordable during the mid-1990s due to market saturation. So Dell was a big company that made computers. They sold a lot of computers. I showed you earlier Micron, that was a computer company. They had Austin, I never heard of that company. Zeos, I showed you earlier. Quantex, I showed you earlier. EPS, don't know anything about it. Gateway, that was a pretty big computer company. Robotech Cobra. Robotech. Like the anime cartoon series on television. Let's see, Xenon. I showed you Xenix earlier, right? Xenix was a electronics company. They made televisions, radios, and other consumer electronic goods. And the Digital Celebris, that's a computer company. We definitely had more of a selection in computers back in the 90s. Here's another one, BSI. Never heard of that. Another one called Comex. Got a rating of 8. Let's see. Dell Optiplex. No, sorry, that's not a rating. That's just a sequence of computers that were reviewed. So this is terrific performance. So let's say your computer broke down or something. A service tech would actually come to your house. You would call the service tech if the computer was under warranty, and they would come to your house and fix it. Okay. This is the article about 10 graphics boards or video cards, and it shows this kind of like how they perform in different tasks, and its overall value and everything, and the price of it, and how it performs in different programs like Word 2.0 for Windows, Excel 4.0 for Windows, Corel Draw 3.0, Photo Styler 1.1, and etc. And how much memory you need for the programs. They all require about 2 to 1 megabyte. No, I'm sorry, that's how much video RAM they have. They have anywhere from 1 to 2 megabytes. 2 megabytes for most of them. And the overall score for each video card. These are just like super VGA video cards. Pretty much perform the same. I don't think they had any 3D accelerators around 1994. It came out a little bit later. I think 3DFX came out with the first 3D accelerator around 96, I think, 1996. Other than that, it was just all super VGA. And this one, this page has adverts from Compact Computer, which was pretty, which was a very premium computer, a compact, you know. As you can see, the price is very high for these. Like it's like $3,679 for a Pentium 60 megahertz 486DX. The second one, 66 at $2,249. Probably inflation adjusted price should be almost $6,500 or something. See how expensive the laptops are? Like this laptop right here. This is a compact LTE Elite for $3,899. Damn. And the one you see right here is just a monochrome laptop with the LCD, I think. Yeah, LCDs were quite expensive back in the day. Very expensive stuff. Laser printers. Yeah, PC Magazine had a lot of articles about different types of printers. And this article is about laser printers for $199. Back in 1994, I was still using dot matrix printers. I think mine was a Citizen GTX 140 or something. It came with my 386 SX 16 megahertz computer back in 1989, and I continued to use it until 1999 until I got a Canon inkjet printer. The cartridges were so expensive for that thing. It's like $50 for just one black ink cartridge, you know, and the printer itself only cost like $69. I guess they were trying to recoup the cost of the printer by selling very expensive ink. And later I figured out how to refill the ink cartridges. But the trick was you can't let the ink run out, you know, from the inkjet cartridge, or it would kind of like burn out the membrane part, the part that touches the paper. I think that was the only trick. Yeah, laser printers. A couple of my friends had laser printers back in 1998, I think. But I don't think any of them had laser printers back in 94, no. The good thing about laser printers is that they are very cost effective. Doesn't cost a lot to run them. And the toners, for one toner you could probably get like almost like more than 1,000 pages, you know. Oh, these are also inkjet printers. Okay. Oh, sorry, it was the inkjet printers, not laser printers. Inkjet printers with laser quality. Yeah, inkjets were around for a pretty long time. And this review highlights inkjet printers and how they perform, you know, with different programs, and how long it takes to print. So this is the fastest, I guess, because it takes the least amount of time to print. So it takes about maybe 4.5 seconds to print using Adobe Photoshop, as you can see here. Lexmarks existed in 1994. I can't believe it. Epson, I know. Canon, they still exist. This one doesn't exist, I know that. Digital Deck Writer, I don't see them anymore. Hewlett Packard, no, I don't see Hewlett Packard anymore. Citizen Printer, no. Citizen used to be a pretty popular company. CIO, I don't see them anymore. They don't exist. Laser printers were, inkjet printers were not that much back in 94. But dot matrix printers were good for one thing. They were very cost effective. You could print a lot of pages out of them, you know. Upgrade your PIM. Another advert. This article is talking about work group packages. There's programs like networking software, WinFax Pro. Well, back in '94, we had I think we had 33, maybe 14.4K modems and 33.6 modems. I think 55.6K modems came out later. That was like the fastest telephone modem there was until DSL came out. That changed everything. Hmm. 3M, that's a company that still exists. They used to make data storage devices like floppy disks, and they make cassette tapes as well as storage devices. But the bad thing about cassette tapes is that if you want to get the data, you have to rewind, you know, like I don't know if you've ever used a tape, you know, where you have to rewind in a Walkman or something. But when I was growing up, that's the kind of media we used to listen to music, you know, back in the 80s and late 70s. That's what we used to use to listen to music. And then CD players came out maybe around the early 90s, late 80s. Yeah, so these are like storage devices. Tapes could hold a lot of memory. Like this thing could hold like 5 gigabytes of memory. That was massive back then. 5 gigabytes. Maybe a hard drive back in '94 was probably about anywhere from 800 megabytes to 1 gigabyte. So this can hold almost 5 times what a hard drive could hold, a magnetic hard drive. This is 2.4 gigabytes, and 2 gigabytes. This is an optical disc. I think iOmega made a lot of these. It's a kind of like a CD-ROM disc, but it's rewritable. 1.3 gigabytes was pretty massive as well. I think a CD-ROM back in the 1990s could hold about 640 megabytes of RAM, or up to 700 sometimes. Zenith computers. I think that's a server or workstation computer. Interesting. Zenith used to make workstation computers. They were known for making televisions, you know, and radios and stuff, and consumer electronics. Lotus was a pretty popular office software back in the 80s and 90s. Not so much anymore. I don't even think they exist. I think Microsoft Office is like the office software running on Windows. Scanning for justice. I think this is talking about scanners and the importance of scanning in terms of scanning documents and photographs and stuff like that, and storing them on hard drives and other media devices. Back in those days, storage was pretty expensive, you know, trying to save stuff on computers. You know, now it's cheap. You could buy like a 4 gigabyte hard drive for about maybe $100. You could buy a 2 gigabyte hard drive for about $60. And I showed you earlier that 4 gigabyte tape or something, that tape storage device. That tape probably cost like maybe $100 back in 1994. And 4 gigabytes, how many times is that? I mean 4 terabytes, I'm sorry, 4 terabyte hard drive. That could hold almost 1,000 times, yet it's about the same price as that 4 gigabyte storage device. Yeah, I did have a scanner back in 1997. It was very, very slow. It took almost 30 seconds. I think it was more than 30 seconds to scan a page. It was slow. I mean, my father told me to like scan like documents, you know, and print them out in the printer. That's what I did, because he didn't want to go to Kinko's. You know, back in those days, if you want to get documents scanned, if you want to copy documents, you had to like go to a Xerox machine and just copy it manually and print them out, and they charge like 5 cents a page or something. Lexmark printer. Still a pretty good company. They still make printers. They made good printers back in the 90s, and they still make good printers now. Comp USA. This is a company you never... This is a company that went defunct. They don't exist anymore. I think they went bankrupt around like 2008 or 2009 or something. Hewlett Packard. That was like a pretty big computer company back in the 90s. I think it was more like a budget oriented computer. It wasn't really I'm sorry, it's HP, not Packard computers. Hewlett Packard, yeah. They still exist today. I don't think their computers are very good anymore. Back in the 90s, I guess they were reasonably priced, and they were kind of a premium computer, you know. It wasn't like a cheap brand or anything. But you had so many brands back in the 90s that you'd always try to get the lowest cost one. Didn't really matter. There are so many computer shops building custom computers. And that's what I got for my Pentium 100. I just went to a small computer store and they just put it together. I think it cost like about maybe about $1,300 back in, I think 95, I think 95, I'm not sure, 95 or 94. Didn't cost much at all. CTX monitors. This is a company that doesn't exist anymore. That doesn't exist. Some kind of encryption software for encrypting data. Now we have BitLocker. on Windows 10, I think. Makes it so much easier to encrypt data, and I guess WinZip and stuff, they have encryption also if you want to encrypt your data. Alright. So back in the mid 1990s, computers were becoming more affordable, and there were so many vendors offering it, you know. It was the market was like getting flooded, so they were getting cheaper and better, basically. And just about everybody started having them. Not only that, they were getting easier and easier to use due to operating systems like Windows 3.1 and later Windows 95, which made it even easier to use, you know, with the graphics user interface based operating systems, so you didn't have to learn commands, you know. Because before DOS, I think they had Unix. That was pretty hard to learn. It's mostly used in the business environment. And some people think DOS is the MS-DOS is hard to use. I never thought it was hard to use. Just have to know how to use the commands. I mean, you just have to type it in correctly and know the commands. So this is some kind of laptop. Ultima laptop. Wow. Forgot all about it. I don't really remember. But I know they don't exist today. See, this one has a trackball on it. Now laptops have like a touchpad on the top here. The buttons are in the same area. The LCD monitors back in the 90s were pretty crude. They're pretty pixelated. They're not as clear as the ones we have today. The first LCD monitor I ever bought was back in I think it was 1999. It was a ViewSonic. I bought it at Costco. Cost like almost $600. It didn't even last 2 years. It broke in like 2 years. Stopped working. About 4 megabytes of RAM, $2,160 with 8 megabytes of RAM. $3,255. Dang. And that was a 486DX50, and this one is a 486DX100. So there's two types of monitors, a color dual scan, I don't know what that is. Color active matrix, I guess color active matrix is better. So the color active matrix with 8 megabytes, $3,655. And it uses a nickel metal hydride battery. Yeah, that's what laptops used to use. They didn't have lithium back then. Didn't exist, you know. You got to be a very rich person to buy a laptop back in the 90s and the 80s also. More adverts. So many adverts in these old magazines. It's just there's more adverts than there's content. There's articles basically. Yeah, PC Magazine and PC World Magazine were known for like giving you how to write simple programs like this. This looks like BASIC or something, I don't know. Yeah, I think this is BASIC. I guess it's telling you to, it's showing you how to hack Microsoft Word 6.0. But I know that's batch programming, the top part. But this part, yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's also batch programming. You could just put all this code into like a notepad and save it as a .bat file or something. Interesting. Yeah, so back in those days, when you got computer magazines, they would always give you tips like this. And back in the 80s, when I used to get computer magazines, there were some magazines which had like, which gave us a code to like make an entire game, you know, back, because they didn't have like floppy drives and stuff, you know, like the Commodore 64. All we had was like that command prompt, and we can program in BASIC, you know. There's no real way to save it because it didn't even come with a floppy disk drive. So then we would type everything in. It was like a couple of pages with lines of basic code on it, you know. And then I type it in, and it didn't work the first time because I didn't type in something correctly. It's like frustrating, you know. But I guess the adults were trying to get us to learn computer programming. Didn't really learn computer programming until I got to college and studied like the first class I took was Introduction to Computer Programming Logic. That's when I really learned how to program, you know, computers. So it says PC Power. What the heck is that? But Milex motherboard. Never heard of that. I don't remember. It's been so many years. So it's a Polywell computer. Gives you more power to work. I bet if you call this number, you're not going to get anyone to answer it. Notice how the computers back in 1994 still had floppy drives. I think this is 1.22 megabyte floppy drive, 5.25 inch. This is a 3.5 inch. It could be 1.44 megabytes or 2.88 megabytes high density floppy disk. This one has like a cover on it. Might have the floppy disk in there. Yeah, the only programming language I really knew about back in the 80s was probably BASIC. I mean, when I got my Apple II, it came with it, so. And in school, you know, if you wanted to take a computer class, they offered some courses in BASIC, you know, and we would learn it. But it's not really it's a little different than, like, let's say you learn Fortran or Pascal or something. And they never really taught us about anything like the different types of things like strings, Boolean functions, and real numbers, and I think real numbers, float point, and integer numbers. It's like whole numbers, like 1 to a million or a billion, but with no decimals, that is, of course. Now look at this, all this hardware stuff. Yeah, a lot of these magazines back in those days had like these adverts, and since we didn't have the internet back in those days, I guess this was the only way for these companies to advertise, you know. So everything came together in the magazines. If you had like if you ordered gaming magazines, you know, then they would have articles. They would have pages like this about all the games and everything. You could order it. You can call this number or whatever. Notice there's no website. There's no web address. Just like how today people go to trade shows and buy things. I mean, they learn about what's coming out in the industry. And about this magazine, you always have the Dell advertisements at the end. Kind of like this. Dell computers were great back then. I mean, a few of my friends had them and they said they were great. They're good computers. They didn't have any problem with it. And I still use Dell computers even today. I mean, I like them. They don't have any problems either. If I'm going to buy a computer made by a company, I would buy a Dell, even today, you know. Very durable machines, well built, and not too expensive either. Well, I can't say the same about these computers. These computers were expensive. But they were good. So you notice again, you have the floppy disk drive. There's no CD-ROM drive. Well, some of them have it. This one has a CD-ROM drive, as you can see. That one has it. Yeah, CD-ROMs and floppy disk drives were pretty much mainstream around, I think in the early 1990s. You had like 386 computers coming with CD-ROM drives. But they were very slow. I think they were like 1x, 1 speed, 2 speed. Okay, thanks for watching.